Welcome to What She Said, the heartbeat of Canadian women's voices, with me, your host, Candace Sampson. Here, we dive deep into the raw, unfiltered stories and triumphs of women from coast to coast. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement where empowerment and education collide and where mansplaining is shown the door. We're here to celebrate, uplift, and echo you. So get cozy, tune in, and let's embark on this journey together, exploring the rich tapestry of women's lives, their battles and victories, right here on What She Said. In an era where we are constantly bombarded with political news, the tactics of grandstanding, lying, and propaganda seem increasingly designed to divide us. The political landscape can be overwhelming, employing tools that exacerbate division and sow discord. This environment can be particularly challenging for women who are often socialized to prioritize niceness and harmony over conflict. Such conditions may tempt us to disengage, but it's precisely in these moments that tuning out becomes most perilous. Disengagement allows those in power to make decisions on our behalf without our input, shaping our lives and communities under unchecked authority. Staying informed and involved isn't just beneficial, it's a crucial defense against the manipulation of our society and a cornerstone of a healthy democracy. The bulk of today's show is vital for understanding the significance of good governance and the necessity of standing firm against corrupt governments as we navigate these tumultuous political waters. Today, I'm honored to host Marit Stiles, leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party and a tireless advocate for accountability in government. As the leader of the opposition since February 2023, Marit has been on the front lines challenging the mismanagement and corruption of Doug Ford's administration. Her efforts are not just vital for Ontario, but serve as an inspiration for all Canadians who value integrity and transparency in their leaders. We'll spend the first half of today's show diving deep into the impacts of Ford's policies, discussing the pervasive issues of voter apathy, and exploring what it means to be a woman in the political arena today. Following our in-depth discussion with Marit, we'll lighten things up a little bit with Brodie, who joins me for an extended Saturday night at the movies, because this week we're indulging in some nostalgia with films like Daddio, featuring Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn, Andrew McCarthy's documentary Brats on the Brat Pack phenomena, and the classic Beverly Hills Cop returns starring Eddie Murphy on Netflix. To wrap up, I'm thrilled to introduce Annastacia Plasksos from Fix It Females, a pioneering business in the world of home repairs and renovations. Based in Toronto, Fix It Females has not only revolutionized service provision, but has also built a strong following on TikTok, inspiring countless individuals with their engaging and informative content. So stay with me for these enlightening discussions and great entertainment recommendations right here on What She Said. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Marit Stiles, leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party, and who has been fighting the good fight as leader of the opposition since February of 2023. Marit is known for her relentless efforts in calling out the corruption and mismanagement of Doug Ford's administration. So today, we'll be discussing the impact of Ford's policies on Ontario, voter turnout, the challenges of being a woman in politics, and what could be done to mitigate the damage being done. Welcome to What She Said, Marit.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm so excited.
So let's start with, top of mind for everybody, the unceremonious and abrupt closing of the Ontario Science Centre last Friday. Can you shed some light on this really shocking act, and why do you think the Ford government did this right now?
Well, I think that Doug Ford and his government intended to do this all along, that they thought they could that it was better just to get it over with, shut the whole thing down, and kind of people would go away and certainly might forget about it in time for the next election. And I think he was very wrong. I think people are actually just starting to wake up to what's happened. There's a bit of a ripple effect, where people are just starting to hear about it in some areas. And I think people are going to be, and what I'm hearing certainly everywhere I go, is that people are outraged and that the government isn't going to be able to get away with this.
Do you think there will be another classic Doug Ford flip-flop on this one? We've seen the architecture firm that built it saying, they're willing to jump in. We've seen private donors say they would help it. What do you think?
Well, I think that anything is possible. And I will say that, we saw this with the green belt. We've seen it with a number of other things. I mean, my goodness, the last year and a half since I became leader, I think they've reversed course on just about every major policy that they've made. And in fact, we've spent more time reversing than we have moving forward on anything. So it's more than possible. And that's why it's really important that nobody gives up, right? The truth is, I don't think that the Ford government ever had any intention of keeping the Science Center open. They've paid millions of dollars to build business cases for why it has to close. Now there's this report that's come out, this engineering report that they say means that it has to be shut down immediately. Lots of experts are saying that's not the case. And at the end of the day, this is just a result of a lot of neglect from government of our public institutions, just like what they're doing to hospitals and schools and childcare. And so I think continuing the fight to keep the Science Center open, reopen it, make sure that the necessary investments are made so that all those future generations can continue to go there, to be inspired by it, is really important. But it's going to mean building a movement kind of along the lines of what we did around the Greenbelt.
This government's sort of been defined by this unending bombardment of cuts and changes, backroom deals, double downs, backpedaling. It feels like chaos. But is it deliberate or is this just really an inept government? Because I think a lot about Steve Bannon's quote about, and my producer's going to have to bleep this, but flooding the zone was shit. And that's what this feels like to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I also think this is a government that just doesn't listen to people, right? They make decisions to help their friends. They're always testing things out to see how much they can get away with to help those friends. And sometimes the public backlash is big enough that they end up scrambling to reverse the decision, as we were just talking about. But the truth is that they've wasted so much time, again, reversing those bad policies, that we haven't been actually focused, and they haven't been focused on fixing the things that need to be fixed. So, are they inept? I think more than likely they are doing this with some intention. And I think at the end of the day, it's always to benefit somebody, usually somebody close to the conservative government and Doug Ford.
It's really hard to keep up with everything that they've done. In fact, there's websites dedicated to everything that they've done. So last night I went to the Ontario Federation of Labor's Ford Tracker, so I could actually remind myself of some of the things that have been done over the last 6 years. Underfunding of healthcare and education, rent controls done away with, Greenbelt, Highway 14, like it goes on and on. My question for you is, of all of the things, what are you most concerned about? What is keeping you awake at night?
The hard one. I mean, I guess because I see a few of these things as really interlinked. I would say that the crisis in healthcare, I'd say crisis in healthcare and in housing is what I hear about most when I'm moving around the province. Every community, small, large cities, little towns, rural communities, everybody is struggling with access to healthcare. So it's quite striking, right? 2.5 million Ontarians without access to a family doctor. Emergency rooms closing down or reducing hours. It really is a crisis. And, I was in a hospital the other day that I can't name because they're so worried about the government taking action against them if they're talking to the opposition. But, I'm in a very well-respected hospital that's using every inch of their hallways have become areas to put patients, and this isn't just something that happens once in a while. It's just it's the constant state of affairs. We have underinvested and we have neglected healthcare for so many years. And I really blame the Conservatives for the state we're in right now, but I think it's gone on for a couple of decades, actually. So I'm very worried about healthcare. And I do believe that the government's intention, and we've started that move toward for-profit healthcare, And I'm worried about it because I think there's a lot of those vultures, those big healthcare corporations in the United States. They've been circling for years around Canada. They know there's a buck to be made here, and we know it's going to cost Ontarians actually literally out of our pockets more, but also even when the government is paying through our public healthcare dollars, it's actually costs more to take that private for profit route. So it's very concerning. And I'm really hearing more and more situations that where people have been caught out without healthcare. I think that, and then I would just say the other thing is obviously housing, because without a home, like that has to be your first priority, a roof, right? And there's so many people obviously homeless right now, but there's so many more who are at risk of losing their homes. Like, and you mentioned rent control. I mean, the impact that taking away rent control has had on so many people in this province, it's really hard to actually get a number on it. But I meet people all the time who are worried because they're these big corporate landlords in particular are bumping their rent up ridiculously, and they are on fixed income, or they're already juggling multiple jobs. So I think both of those things, they're interlinked a little bit in terms of the just general neglect in our province, and something has to change. Something has to change.
Yeah, and sadly, what's giving right now is our health and the roofs over our head, which is tragic to see this happening. So you recently made a really bold move. And frankly, I'm here for it. I loved it. You called out Premier Doug Ford. You called him corrupt outside of the legislature, inviting him to sue you. Why did you do this? And has there been a reaction from his government?
Well, no, there hasn't been any reaction. I've heard a word from them, which I'm not surprised about, actually. I don't think they want to be talking about it because they know I'm hitting very close to the truth. And it's not the first time I've actually said that outside of the chamber. In fact, I can't say it in the chamber. I'd be ruled out of order. So, but it's not the first time that I've said it. I said it when the Greenbelt fiasco was going on. I've said it a number of times. I do believe he is corrupt. I won't stop saying it. And as soon as I said it, there was an outpouring of Ontarians saying, yes, tell it like it is. We have enough evidence of this with the Greenbelt. Now, the Science Centre, the luxury spa in downtown Toronto at Ontario Place. This government and this premier are here to help his buddies. They haven't responded to me directly, as I said. I don't think they want to go down that road because they have too much to hide. And I do hope that the RCMP investigation will reveal a lot. I expect it will. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to keep shining a light in those dark corners and try to expose the government for what they are. Look, most of the time, all we're asking for is really basic transparency, which is really this is the least that you should be expecting from your government.
And yet we have them on their private phones all the time, deleting emails. So transparency is non-existent with this government. And which sort of brings me to the next thing. It's sort of scandal after scandal with them. And in the past, we've seen governments brought down faster and for less. So why do you think this government has sort of a stickiness around it?
Well, I think the last election coming out of COVID was a little bit unique, right? I think I think a lot of Ontarians were really struggling. They just wanted to get through the election. And of course, we did see really low voter turnout, which is something that I think about a lot. It's really the main reason why I decided to run for leader of the NDP, leader of the opposition, because I was very concerned about that lowest voter turnout. I think it was the lowest voter turnout in election history here in Ontario. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. I think that voter apathy, I think a lot of people who are unhappy about the way things are just aren't showing up because they don't think that they can do anything to affect government.
You're bringing me right into my next question, which was about that low voter turnout, which, as you noted, was the lowest voter turnout in election history in Ontario. Why are we seeing such unprecedented levels of this apathy, and what can we do to reverse this trend? It's really concerning.
It is concerning. I think people have lost faith in faith that government can actually make their lives better at all or more affordable. And I'll say my job, I think, is to make them believe that government can be there for them, can make their lives easier, that government isn't there to actually make life more complicated or more difficult, that government can make changes that help them when it comes to the things that they're struggling with, and that government can be there for the many and not just the money. And I think that's a really important thing to get across to people, that their vote can make a difference. But frankly, we have to give them something to vote for.
I couldn't agree with you more. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to continue the conversation with the leader of Ontario's NDP and leader of the opposition, Marit Stiles.
Hi, I'm Steve Yerko.
And I'm Tara Sands. Now available from Maji Media is our new podcast, 4Kids Flashback. 4Kids is the company who brought you the English dub of Pokemon in the late 90s and so many other shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kirby, the infamous One Piece dub, and so many more.
We'll be talking to the people who worked at 4Kids. Actors, directors, writers, editors, producers, engineers, you get the point. And hopefully get the answers to questions both you and I have about the company.
I actually worked there as a voice actor on some of the shows.
And I was a kid watching the shows and remember way more than Tara does.
And thank God for that. Steve is actually a professional storyboard artist, which gives some really unique insights into anime and animation. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts. That's the number 4 Kids Flashback.
I want to talk a little bit about being a woman in politics. What drew you to politics in the first place? You alluded to it a little bit about why you threw your hat in the ring. Have you always been this politically minded? Was the catalyst that low voter turnout?
Well, I mean, going way back, I would say my parents were not partisan political people at all, but they did come out of a time, the 60s, 70s, where they cared about the planet. They cared about a lot of things. I was raised to believe that, we had a responsibility to take care of each other. And from the time I was quite young, I had really strong feelings about just standing up for each other. That was something I've always really believed in, but I wasn't a partisan person until a little later. But I volunteered a lot on campaigns, like just about, that's what I did for many years, was volunteering and helping out on things and for candidates that I believed in. But what finally got me to run, and I ran as a school board trustee first, by the way, in my riding. And the reason I ran was my kids were in public schools, and there were some big decisions being made by the public school board in my riding about the sale of a bunch of schools, school buildings that hadn't been used as schools in a long time. And I knew that there was the opportunity, that it was going to happen, and that there was the opportunity to, use that as a way to build good housing, for example, or, have some community benefit to whatever development was going to happen. But I also wanted to make sure that we still had a really good public school in our community. So that's why I got involved. And then when I was a school board trustee, it was so clear to me that every decision that impacts education is made at the provincial level. So for me, that was my big driver into running at the provincial level. It's how I got here. And then when Andrea, our former leader, decided not to step down from leader again, I thought, geez, again, as I mentioned, the lower voter apathy was what really had me concerned. And I think I'm up to the challenge.
And challenge you get, because women in politics face a real significant amount of hate and vitriol from people. How do you handle the constant barrage of negativity, and what impact do you think this has on encouraging more women to enter politics?
That's a great question. And I would say, first of all, that a lot of people are subjected to a lot of toxicity right now, especially online and especially directed at women. And, if you're a racialized woman or you're LGBTQ, if you're trans, it's at a whole other level. So I think that's a reality that we're existing right now, and it's really hard for everyone. And I think we should talk about it amongst ourselves and talk about how we navigate that space, because it's really, really difficult. I try personally to focus on real people. I try to make sure that I am out there in communities, listening to people, asking the questions, because I think that's where I can handle, people who feel negative about things or people who disagree with me. Obviously, I can handle that, no problem. But I think it's better to come directly from a person and have a real conversation. And so I try to focus on that. And then at the same time, I will say I will not tolerate hate. I try very hard not to give that any room, while at the same time understanding that sometimes there is something behind the negativity. When you talk to real people and they're really negative and they're feeling really angry at the world, it's important to try to understand why. A lot of people are struggling to survive. And so I think I also try to do that. But I do want to say, it's really important for me to say to people out there, particularly women, don't let it stop you. Don't let it stop you. Don't let the bullies drive us out. We, our mothers, our grandmothers have fought for generations for us to have these opportunities. Don't let them drive you out. And there's a wonderful, I will say, solidarity among women. And it isn't even partisan either, but there's a lot of support for each other out there against that kind of negativity. And so there is a support network for anybody who is thinking of entering that space.
And apart from the public scrutiny and that sort of side of things, women in politics also face challenges and resistance from existing institutions. And Shannon Phillips is a perfect example of this. An MLA in Alberta recently cited a lot of the pressures as her reason for departure for politics. So can you share your experiences with institutional barriers and how they have shaped your political journey?
Yeah, I think certainly, what I've experienced is probably not that different than a lot of women in any career or journey, political or not, right? I've had employers who didn't support my political ambitions or interests. I've faced barriers in access to childcare, which is a real one. I've certainly felt at times that there are powerful organizations out there in our communities. If you speak up, sometimes when you're speaking truth to power doesn't like it very much. So you can, sometimes you get their backs up. But that's why I feel it's really important to have a strong team around you. And I really feel awful about what happened to Shannon Phillips. Actually, it was absolutely outrageous what happened to her. And nobody should have to stand for that. Here, we have a strong caucus. It's one of the reasons I like also actually party politics, because you have a team around you of people who share your values, your vision, who stand with you. So you aren't really alone. And it's really, really important.
As a resident of Ontario, I know my vote matters. I will be voting in the next election. There's no question of that. But in the meantime, I just feel frustrated and angry watching this. So short of an election, are there any immediate actions that can be taken to stop the Ford's administration from further dismantling really critical aspects of Ontario's governance?
Well, I would say this. I think Doug Ford has underestimated people power repeatedly. He underestimated it when he tried to attack the education workers, and people were not going to have any of it. And we stood up and we stood together, and all the unions stood together. Like, it was quite something, and we won. He underestimated how people feel about our green spaces, about our farmland, about the green belt when he tried to pave over the green belt. And we came together, farmers and environmentalists, all kinds of people came together, unions, the NDP, like we came together and we stood up against it and we won. And I believe we can do it again. We've done it repeatedly, but it means building that movement of people who are going to be ready to stand up to this government. And then more importantly, I think, are ready to choose a government that's going to actually make their lives better. So we can keep fighting him case by case, policy by policy, the science center, the Ontario place, the privatization of healthcare, and we'll get these little wins. But if you look at what they're doing, every time we win something, they just change the laws to make it easier for them to go back in there and privatize something or make some money for their friends off something or carve up urban boundaries or you name it, right? And what they're not doing is getting things done for Ontarians. They're not addressing the housing crisis. They're not addressing healthcare crisis. They're not fixing our schools. So I believe we need to form that movement. And that's why I'm being very shameless, actually, in saying to people, I don't care how you voted in the past. I want you to vote with us this time. There's going to be a pretty clear choice, I think, going into the next election. It's going to be, do you continue on this path or do you go to something a little bit better than them, but not that really let us down in the past as well? Or do we try for something really different? So I think that's one thing I would say. And then the other thing is, do not underestimate actually the impact that your emails or phone calls to MPPs have. It really does impact them, especially if you're calling a government or conservative MPP. Letting them know how you feel is really important. Even if they push back or they don't even respond to you, they're keeping track of that, and it does make a difference.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more with Marit Stiles, leader of the Ontario NDP. We're back, and we're speaking with Marit Stiles, leader of the Ontario NDP and official leader of the opposition here in Ontario. We're seeing the Ford government is also putting out feelers to gauge public sentiment and hint at the possibility of an early election. So what are your thoughts on this? I honestly, I think maybe a bit of it's motivated by this RCMP investigation and Poilievre government. But, this is just what I'm reading, online. What do you think?
I think that ultimately this is about Doug Ford and his people have decided they want to get ahead of the RCMP investigation. I think you're right. And all of the scandals that are out there. They want to get an easy 4 years. And they've decided that it's going to be easier for them if they go ahead of the federal election, if they call the provincial election ahead of the federal election, and so that they can kind of pretend that they're fighting the carbon tax or fighting, the liberals, Trudeau liberals or whatever, because that's what people are where people's focus is right now. And I got to tell you, it's funny to me because it's so clear that they don't, if Pierre Poilievre is set to possibly win the next federal election, I hope not. But it's pretty clear that even the Ford government is worried about what that means, right? So, even conservatives don't like conservative policies sometimes. But I'll tell you another thing. I mean, I think people will see through this. I do think they will. In history, when we look back on history here in Ontario, but also all across the country, people really respond badly generally when government calls an election really early because it's just money wasted. There's no good reason to do it other than essentially greed, right? More time, more power. They have the power right now to pass a law in 3 days if they want to. I don't like it, but they can. So they have no good reason other than just more power. And I don't think Ontarians will stand for that. And I think people will see through it.
Do you believe the damage caused by Ford's policies can be undone? If so, how? And where would you even begin?
As I said, I think he's spent more time in reverse than he has actually trying to address any issues. And so we have gotten very little done. I mean, the policies that he's brought in, and certainly there has been a lot of damage, and there continues to be. And there will be more if he stays in power. I think especially when you look at healthcare, again, in education. I think our schools, and I really have to say, healthcare workers and education workers are doing an incredible job out there with so few resources. So many people have left those sectors. And so they're doing more with less, and with less people. It's really, really hard. And I think actually that to some extent they kind of cover up what the damage is, because, so much of what makes a school great is the teachers, the librarians, the principals, the administrators. That's what make a school great. And so as long as they're there and they're working their darndest, sometimes parents and others don't notice what it's really like in those schools. But it's really bad. And I think we're seeing the same thing, as I said, in healthcare, and then we're not moving forward on housing. So can that be undone? Absolutely. No question. If you look at where they're wasting money, we have a massive deficit, first of all, but we also have a government that's just throwing money around, massive amounts of money at things that are just, ways to buy out, for example, the beer store contract a year early, just so he can get what he wants a year early. That is, by the government's own estimate, it's costing a $250 million. It's possibly closer to $1 billion. That is money that could be spent so many other places. They're spending $800 million almost on a parking garage to support a Austrian luxury spa company in downtown Toronto to serve a few very elite, wealthy people. This is money that could be better spent. So I think there are absolutely so many things that could be both undone and done so much better. I would 100. First step, vote him out. We've got to vote him out. And then the next step is we start to invest in those things that matter. We start to actually build housing. And I'm going to give you one little example. We cannot rely on only the private sector to build affordable housing. It will not happen. It's not really in their interest. It's not to say that they don't have a role to play in building housing, but truly affordable housing is not going to be built that way. And we've seen it over and over again. We need to create an organization just like we used to have back in the day, where government, the Ontario government, actually helps to finance, helps to facilitate the building of truly affordable housing options like rent-geared income, co-op housing, all those good things, and partner with nonprofits and with municipalities. And that's how we're going to actually build truly affordable housing and start to crack this housing affordability nut and break through that crisis.
What is your long-term vision for Ontario?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that we have had a vision for a long time of some real positive solutions on the things that people are really hurting on, like housing and healthcare and the cost of living. It's not good enough. And this is one of I say this often to our caucus, but it's not enough to just oppose. We have to propose some concrete alternatives. And the way I look at, I came to Ontario in the early 90s. I was born and raised in Newfoundland, came here to go to university, and then stayed because, like so many people in my province at the time, there weren't a lot of opportunities and jobs. The main industry was faltering. It was a bit of crisis. So we came here. And so Ontario then, you could imagine owning a home on a working class salary. Eventually I did. I did own a home. I worked for a not-profit, and I was able to afford a home with my partner. That's unimaginable right now. We stayed here because our kids could go to good public schools within a reasonable distance. We could get a good family doctor. These were pretty basic things. But also, Ontario at that time, I think, had a lot of hope. It was the place of opportunity, right? And I think that's what we have to build back again. And I think that means concrete solutions along the lines of the thing I just proposed, which we call Homes Ontario, removing the paperwork burden for doctors so everybody in the province can have a family doctor, and so many other solutions. But there are tangible things we can do that we've proposed already that would help move us in that direction. I guess I feel like what people need to acknowledge is that life has gotten worse under 6 years of Doug Ford. And so we're going to show them how it can all be done better.
I can't thank you enough for joining me today. What she said is my sandbox, so I don't have to be objective. You've got my vote in the next election, Marit. And I hope Doug calls it soon, because I really do think Ontario is fed up with him. Is the NDP ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been saying to people, I mean, obviously, as I said, I think people will see through this and won't like it if he calls an election. But I have set things in motion. We were already a bit ahead of the game. Our fundraising is going really, really well. We are meeting records that we're out fundraising a lot of the other parties. We have our election planning committee ready to go. Our election team is structured. We are putting candidates in place, and we're going to start nominating people very soon. So I think we are ready. We will be ready. If he wants to call it, I keep saying, just bring it on.
Excellent. All right, Marit. I hope when he does, you'll come back and join us and we can have another discussion.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's time to find out what's new in entertainment with Anne Brodie. So, Anne, you've got a pretty packed Saturday night at the movies this week. You want to start with Daddio?
Well, I was excited to see it because of the trailer. It's Sean Penn and Dakota Johnson alone in a cab. That's the whole movie. I mean, we've seen that kind of thing before. There was Locke with Tom Hardy. It was just him. And of course, taxi cab scenes are familiar tropes in films because they're always kind of heightened. Someone's always trying to get somewhere, and then there can be tension. So this is about a girl coming home from a visit to her sister in Oklahoma to Manhattan. She hops in a cab, being driven by Sean Penn's character. Now, she is texting with her lover, and she looks very sad. He watches her in the window, in the mirror, and he actually guesses what she's going through. And it's 2 hours of the two of them discussing relationships and disappointments and their aims in life and he's almost paternal in telling her the way men operate. And it's interesting for us to listen to because yeah, that's right. Oh my God, that's not good. So, and then I think, well, all right, so this is going to happen. It's one guy dominating a woman in conversation, but then it took on a lot of nuances, and it turned out to be quite the sensitive film. And by the time it came to the end, my heart was broken, and it was just so beautiful and about kindness. He didn't mean to dominate her as she thought. He meant to instruct her and help her on her way because she was seeing a married man, and that's a trap. That's a trap. So, and the performances are just out of this world. Okay.
It's not an easy feat to pull off a 2-hour movie with just two people in a cab.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been lots of two-handers before, but and I thought, well, this is going to be more of the same, but it wasn't. And the reason is because of the writing. The writing is magnificent. Her visit to Oklahoma also opened up something. And again, he guessed everything about her childhood. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
All right, so let's jump into Bratz. I am so excited for this. This is my era. So this is basically my teen years in a documentary. So I want to hear about this.
Well, if you love the Brat Pack and you didn't mind the name, and you're going to have mixed feelings about it. They were named the Brat Pack, this group of 8 actors who were very successful. By a journalist in the New York Magazine in 1985. They were so offended by the title, and it hung on to them their entire lives. They reckon they lost a lot of good jobs because they were considered trite. It's heartbreaking when you see what happens. So Andrew McCarthy goes out to interview them all. Emilio Estevez is not happy to talk about being a member of the Brat Pack. It hurt him, not only personally to be called a brat, to be taken as a non-reliable actor, but it also hurt his career. He didn't get much work. When do you ever see him in anything? But part of that, there's a lot of bitterness there. Now, the others are almost all in agreement with him, except for Ali Sheedy, who says she was a very lonely teenager and this gave her a group to belong to, which, you know, she's entitled to that opinion. But Molly Ringwald was deeply offended by it. It was just not a nice thing to do. It was a lazy move on this journalist's part to call them that, and it stuck with them all these years. 30 years later, for heaven's sakes. You know, some of them.
I get that a little bit, but I mean, I see where she was probably just the journalist. I'm assuming it was a she.
No, it
was just doing it was a man. Okay. Was maybe just playing with words, looking for an interesting title.
A grabby
but
title.
It really did stick. People, for some reason, loved that name for them. And I just remember that's what they were called the entire time. But it's interesting to hear their perspective on it and talk about it. So I really want to catch it.
But not just now. Back then, they were interviewed by all the morning shows, for instance. They have clips there. Every last one of them, except Ali, said that they really disliked it. They felt that wasn't who they were. That wasn't their reality. And they were being a little bit gentle about it, I suppose, but not enough to make their point. So that's it's incredibly triggering for them to think about that time. So, you know, it's not quite the dream of the Brat Pack.
I'm sure that they had their trials as well. So Bratz is available on Netflix?
Disney Plus.
Disney. Okay, fantastic. All right. Another blast from the past this week. Beverly Hills Cop on Netflix. I'm actually excited about this one. I don't know why, Anne.
I know you've been talking about it all
It's
week.
crazy. I'm excited about this one.
I think a lot of people are, but why are you so excited?
I think, again, it's nostalgia, right? And watching the trailer, seeing Judge Reinhold, on screen again, and Kevin Bacon is in it. Like, it is such a blast from the past for me. It's just a wave of nostalgia. I don't really even care if the movie's any good or not, to tell you the truth. I just want to see these. I just want to see these actors from that time back on screen again. So I don't know. What did you think of it?
You know, I interviewed him so many times back in the day when he was really quite prolific, and I'm going to tell you something. He's not especially funny. He's very serious, very thoughtful. And he asked me once about one of his films that I'm not going to name. He said, I'm after the interview was over, he said, I'm concerned about this film. I don't think people are going to like it. What did you think? And, you know, I gave him an answer, but he would ask a journalist this because he felt insecure about it. And yet there was a trust that he asked, and he thought he could get the truth. He didn't really, but
that's interesting. You know, I think a lot of us think that celebrities are just so full of themselves and cocky, but they're just people. They need validation too.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially him, because he's so out there in his films. You know, he's a personality, but he's not like that.
Interesting.
I love him. I really love him.
All right. We're going to close out this week's Saturday Night at the Movies with Fancy Dance. I mean, just another stellar performance from Lily Gladstone.
Yes, who was Oscar nominated for Killers of the Flower Moon. So she's back playing the aunt of a young girl whose mother has disappeared. They live on the reservation back in Oklahoma, same place, and on the Seneca Cayuga, as a matter of fact. So she's caught between two very traumatic situations. Her sister's missing. Law enforcement doesn't appear to care at all. Is it because she's Indigenous? That's the thread. The other situation is Child Protective Services are coming for her niece. They live together in tremendous harmony and understanding. They want to take her away because Jax, Lily's character, has a criminal record. So she's about to lose everything. She's lost her sister, and she's in a very difficult place. So they set out on a journey. They go to the powwow. The young girl's mother, Jax's sister, goes to the powwow every year without missing it. And she thinks this kind of magical thinking that if she goes to the powwow, her mother will show up. So it's very sad. But I got to tell you, it's a sad story. Gladstone is phenomenal. I don't know what it is about her. She is so alluring as a personality, as a character, and you want everything good for her. You see, the two of them survive basically by stealing and cars, groceries, all kinds of things. It's a tough life. They've been shoved to the side. So it's her performance that brings out all these incredible emotions that come with this. And she's a force of nature. Honestly, Lily Gladstone, I think, is like the star to watch.
All right. I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of her. And I hope we do. All right, Ann, you've got these and a lot more over on whatshesaidtalk.com, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
I can't wait for you to meet my next guest because her business embodies everything What She Said is about. Annastacia Plasksos is the founder of Fix It Females, a unique business dedicated to empowering women in the world of DIY home repairs and maintenance. Fix It Females has garnered significant attention, not only for their exceptional services in their home city of Toronto, but also for their popular TikTok account, which has amassed over 86.8 thousand followers. Welcome to What She Said, Annastacia.
Thank you very much for having me. We're very excited to be here today.
Can you start by telling us about Fix It Females and what inspired you to start this business?
Sure. So I kind of grew up in the renovation field with my parents. My dad was a contractor himself, and my mom was in the flooring industry for many years before this, and so were her parents as well. So I was kind of born and bred into it. When I started getting out there and looking for actual field work, like I really wanted to do drywall and tiling was my main focus. I thought it was very interesting, and just like the challenge of it, of a girl, doing tile was like what drew me to that. So I started tiling at a very young age. I think I was about 17 or 18 when I started tiling and doing drywall work. I started looking for jobs, and I was so often turned down. And when I would call people and I would say, yeah, I've been, tiling and I'm pretty good at it. I can show you my work. As soon as they heard that my voice sounded female, they would tell me, oh no, sorry, we're not looking anymore, or that position's been filled. So I was just getting constantly turned down. And finally somebody did hire me, and when I was working for them, I was tiling bathrooms, in a couple of days, and they were paying me a quarter of the amount that these guys were getting paid when it took them more than a week to do the
Oh, that's infuriating.
Yeah. So I think that was pretty much my driving force, was to get into the field and kind of start my own business. And the reason I chose such a bold name was to ensure people knew they were dealing with females when they did call us or try to hire us. Yeah. So that's basically what kind of drew me to start this business, and to make other women and people feel welcome, people of all walks of nature. So
Fix It Females has a really strong presence on TikTok with over 86.8 thousand followers. So how has this platform impacted your business, if at all, and its reach?
I think it's crazy. Like, we never had any idea that TikTok would have been a platform that we would use before. But we had a couple of ideas within the group that we should start posting on there, just because we all have very unique and comical personalities. So we thought, what better way to showcase that without taking away from the seriousness of our business. So I think TikTok has impacted us in ways that I never really thought they would. Like, for example, when we walk on the street, like I'll get recognized if I'm going out for dinner with a friend or something. Sometimes people will come up to me and they say, "Oh my God, you're that girl from TikTok." It's brought us a lot of unique opportunities in terms of work and stuff. I've met a lot of really cool people through it. I've been asked to be on a lot of like little shows and podcasts and stuff like that. So that's been super cool. And I never thought it would have blown up the way that it did. And I'm super grateful for it. And I think it's a great way for us to showcase our personalities, like I said, without taking away from the seriousness of Fix It Females and the work that we do, because we are right up there with the rest of the contractors here in the GTA. So.
You mentioned that, by calling it Fix It Females, nobody is surprised when they call you to work with you, obviously. But it's a really male-dominated industry. So do you still deal with pushback in other ways in the industry?
Absolutely. Almost every day. I mean, we get one way that social media has impacted us is it reaches a lot of people. And, people are very opinionated and they have a lot to say. So we get a lot of interesting comments, which actually gives us fuel to start and give us ideas to new content, right? So we welcome those negative comments. But I think that, it is in a way challenging in certain aspects of the company. For example, when I'm on a job site and I'm doing, let's say, a excavation and a demolition, and we're doing an addition, and I find it sometimes difficult to work with certain individuals and companies, especially people from the older generation. I had this one example. I'm working on a project recently, and I had called this company to have something removed off the property, and they wouldn't do it for me. And then the guy that I was working with said, "Why don't you give them a call?" And they were there in 15 minutes to remove this thing. I don't want to say what it was because that would be very obvious. But it was so maddening to me because I couldn't do my job that day because something was stopping me from doing it. And then as soon as they heard the male voice, they said, "Okay, no problem. We'll be there in 15 to 20 minutes. So that to me, those kinds of things happen all the time. And it's really sad because I take my job very seriously and I do everything in my power to connect and help my clients. And having something like that be the challenge and the barrier is just, it's really hard. But I've been in this industry now for more than 20 years. So I've experienced a lot of stuff. So I'm used to it. But it's kind of sad to say that too, right? But it just is the reality of it.
So you mentioned that you've been doing this for over 20 years. Have things improved at least?
Yeah, I think they have in a way. I wouldn't say completely, but I think they have in a way. In certain circumstances, I would say people have become more accepting. I mean, we've become more accepting of plenty of things around the world now. But I think in this certain situation, I think things have changed for the better. Although I still hear people that are applying to work for us that they have had issues either in the past or they're going through present issues that are not allowing them to secure jobs with other contractors. But I think from the contractors aspect, I haven't really heard of anything like that. So I'm not really sure like where that controversy would lie, but I know definitely that it has changed for the better. But there are still some people that don't accept women in this field or women in this industry or trade. So I think there's definitely some change. We're getting there. We're getting there slowly.
Well, that is encouraging. And your business also emphasizes the importance of community. I love that, by the way. So how have you built and maintained a supportive community around Fix It Females?
Well, I think that us collectively as a company, like I said, we all have very unique and strong and funny personalities. And I think that shows through our community. We do a lot of work for with the Girl Guides, but we do like Girl Guide nights where we go out and we meet the Girl Guides from all different sectors. So from all different ages up, from like 5-year-olds and up, and we teach them how to work with tools or do little activities with them. Our last one that we attended with a school here in East York, we were showing them what tools went with what. And then we'd have a questionnaire at the end. And then we gave them all little hats, and we put Taylor Swift on, and we danced down a line, and it was so cool. It's so fun.
You have all the elements. You have all the elements in there. You have Taylor Swift. You have female empowerment through construction. You're dancing along, and you're inspiring young women. I love every aspect of this. This is incredible. So thank you for sharing that with me. What's next though for you? Or do you have plans to grow outside of where you currently are? What are you thinking in terms of growth? Or are you happy with what you're doing right now?
My personality is very intense, and I'm never content, and I'm always looking for the next best thing. And I think that we are looking to expand. I'm thinking maybe Vancouver. So we might be opening a pop-up shop in Vancouver sometime soon. So make sure to look out for that. But I am content with where I am now, but there's always room for improvement and room for more. I'm also kind of toying with the idea of doing maybe like a franchise or something. I don't know. The possibilities are endless, but I think I've always wanted to open a school. I've always wanted to do a lot of stuff. So hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be doing some really cool things. So I guess stay tuned.
Amazing.
For what's next year. Yeah.
So before we leave that, do you have any advice for women who are hesitant to tackle home repair projects on their own?
You mean like homeowners?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of women, I think, would think, oh, I can't do that because this was typically something my dad or my husband or my boyfriend or brother would have done. So what would you say to women who maybe are hesitant to attempt these things?
I think you never know till you try. And there's tons of videos out there. I've even put out some videos, how-to videos on YouTube. You can find them. There's other people too that kind of teach you how to get the basis of things. But honestly, I would have never been where I am right now if I didn't start painting or if I didn't start tiling and just did it. When I started 20 years ago, it was very different. There wasn't any how-to videos. I just kind of learned on the job. But I would say go for it. And if anyone's out there and you need advice or you need some help, I'm just a phone call, text, TikTok away. So, I'm here for to support and help anyone that wants to get in the trades. And I think if you want to, just go for it. You'll never know till you try it.
All right. Wonderful. Annastacia, where can people find you and connect and maybe send that message so that they can talk to you?
Absolutely. So, well, as you know, we've got a big presence on TikTok, so you can contact us there. Our Instagram handle is at Fix It Females. You can also contact us by phone. All of our information's out there. My email, I'm reachable by email too, and also by text. So any way you want, you can contact us, and we'll be here for you.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today, Annastacia.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If today's podcast resonated with you, spread the word and share the inspiration. Don't forget to hit subscribe on What She Said across your favorite podcast platforms. Crave more? Join my vibrant community by signing up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com, and let's get social on Facebook, Instagram, and X at What She Said Talk. Dive into my world a little deeper on TikTok and Threads at Candace Said. And for those who love the airwaves, catch me weekly on 105.9 The Region, Blast the Radio, and 107.7 Pulse FM. Until next time, keep making waves and remember, your voice matters.
It is your favorite girl. That's right, it's the Allie Mars, the one and the only. Everyone else just ain't me. I am the host of Welcome to Mars, a lifestyle podcast where nothing is off the table. I have come a long way from sex and dating and have transformed the new vibe to all things lifestyle. We still talk sex, but I'm more interested in the journey, where people have come from, how they made it, and where they're going. Subscribe or follow to a brand new look and a brand new era. Welcome to Mars.
Subscribe or follow on Apple, Spotify, Google, or at thealliemars.com.
Because even with the new look, I'm still that same bitch you love to hate.
What happens when we play outside? We become healthier, both mentally and physically. We become more creative and more focused. We connect with nature, each other, and ourselves. Let's Take This Outside, a new podcast hosted by me, Marianne Iveson, an aspiring outdoor athlete and nature lover. I speak to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about their connection to nature, how it affects their performance, and everyday life. Let's Take This Outside, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and at letstakethisoutside.ca.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.